Video, and today we are going to be exposing the Joe Rogan character, and we're also going to be exposing the Mark Zuckerberg character. So let's get into this, people.
The Joe Rogan.
Bam, straight off the offset. So as you can see right here, you have Joe Rogan experience, yeah? We don't have much time to break down numerology and coding, but his name is probably coded. I would not be surprised. And as you are looking at right here, you can see he has a illuminated eye right there. Some dummies may believe that this is a third eye open, but in reality, this is the Lucifer eye. This is the all-seeing eye, because yes, they do worship the beast, and yes, they work for the beast. And if you didn't notice, lightning bolt right there, lightning bolt right there. It says in the scriptures that Satan fell from heaven like lightning. So satanic symbology right there, people. Let's get into what these silly characters have to say for themselves.
Experience.
When we take down something that we're not supposed to, I mean that is like, I mean that's the worst. I mean
How
that's
do you
like
discern? Like how?
Pay attention to the eyes as well, people. Both of the characters are looking into the corner, paying attention to their script. And as you can see right here, we're pausing the Joe Rogan character. If you guys remember beforehand, the studio that he had before this look, it had the Freemason bricks. He had the Freemason bricks behind him. So it's just evidence right there, people, that they're the agents. They're the gatekeepers. So don't get your information from these people. And if you do get your information from these people, you're living in a world of hurt.
Like say like these Christian Facebook pages. I don't know how they found out that 19 of 20.
He just said something about discernment, okay? Talking about how so-called Facebook algorithm discerns stuff that should not be on there, okay? Controversial stuff, okay? So let's have a look into what they're going to say.
Were fake. But if someone just says I am Bob Smith and they post as Bob Smith and they have a photograph but really what they're doing is trying to
because this is not real discernment. Remember, what I'm doing right here in this video exposing these two characters is discernment, because we are not taking what they are giving us. However, these two characters are going to give you another idea of what discernment is.
talk shit about Joe Biden and get people to vote Republican in the midterms. Like how?
So right here they're talking about Joe Biden and voting. So of course they've got to convince the masses that their vote counts and that the election is real. Yeah, of course they've got to do that, people. They've got to play their role.
What? How do you know whether someone's real or not? Like this is the big argument with Elon and Twitter, because Elon asked Twitter, like,
Now watch this now, people. Watch what they're about to say about real people.
what percentage of your website is filled with bots? And they say 5%, and he says, I don't believe you. I think it's higher. And let's find out how you've come to this conclusion.
Yeah.
And you know, I believe they said that they just took 100 random Twitter pages and looked at the interaction, and there's some sort of an algorithm they applied to it. But how do you discern?
yeah. So I mean I think estimating the overall prevalence is one thing, but I think that the question of looking at a
Notice how the Rogan character says you, as if the Mark guy is responsible for that. Remember, this Mark Zuckerberg guy has no control over Facebook. Absolute no control. The only control this Mark Zuckerberg has is to control his eyes reading his script, to make sure he's doing a good job of being the front man.
page, and is this page authentic? I think that there's a bunch of signals around that. One of the things that we try to do is for large pages, we try to make sure that we know who the admin of that page is. We don't necessarily, you should be able to run an anonymous page. You don't necessarily need to out yourself and say who you are running it, but we want to make sure that we sort of have like an identity for that person on.
So you don't have to come out and admit who you are. But the AI and the system behind it is building up a database on who you are to confirm that you are a real person. And once this government software understands that you are a real person, yes, the surveillance then begins.
File, so that way we know, like at least behind the scenes, that that person is real. For certain political things, I think having a sense of what country they're originating from. I mean, some of that you can do just by looking at where their server traffic comes from, like is the IP address coming from Romania, or because if it's like an ad in some other country's election, then you.
And now they're talking about the IP address and where people are based. And what he's basically saying that where you're based, where your IP is set up, your adverts and the stuff that you're going to be seeing It's all programmed and preference for your area. You understand, people? You're not gonna be in this African country hearing about news in United States, and United States is not gonna be hearing about politics in Africa. You understand? It's all for the certain area where your IP address is.
Probably want to make sure that that ad is
It's brainwash designed for your area. Let's just put it like that.
Especially in countries that have laws around that, are coming from someone who's a valid citizen, or like at least in that place. So there's a bunch of, I think, I don't know, one theme in my worldview around this stuff, when it gets to some of the stuff that we talked about before, is like, I don't think that this stuff is black.
Pay attention to the eyes, people. Always. Not just Joe Rogan and these characters. Every time you see these people come in to speak and say some information, pay attention to their eyes. It's not coming from their mouth.
White, or that you're ever going to have like a perfect AI system. I think it's all trade-offs all the way down, right? And it's and you could build a system, and you can either be overly aggressive and capture a higher percent of the bad guys, but then also by accident take out some number of good guys, or you could.
Okay, so here he's talking about good guys and bad guys, and we know already when it comes to this truth game, we use their technology and their devices to combat them and to destroy them. Okay, so in the eyes of Facebook and the eyes of these companies and these apps and whatever they want to use, people like I and other truthers in the game are considered to be the bad guys, okay? And the good guys are people who push their narrative, okay? So now he's talking about eliminating some of the good guys and eliminating some of the bad guys. They have to be careful where they tread, okay? Because some people like I are going to have a stronger influence on the people than one of their workers. You understand?
Be a little more lenient and say, okay, no, the cost of taking out any number of good guys is too high, so we're going to tolerate having, just a little bit more, more bad guys on the system. These are values questions, right? Around what do you value more, and those are super tricky questions. And part of what I've struggled with around this is,
and you get dummies that come out and stand by these characters and try to back them up, but you need to pay attention to what they say, because you even have the Elon character, the Elon Musk character, come out and speak about how he's down for free speech. But if you listen carefully to what he said after that, he said he's down with free speech as long as it's within the guidelines. Okay? They're the gatekeepers, people.
I didn't get into this to basically judge those things. I got into this to design.
I didn't get into this. He has to remind the people of his backstory and his fantasy life that they built up for him. Remember, this character, he has a film on Netflix. He has a documentary, a film based around his life. All of these so-called characters have a fantasy life built up around them. That's not their life that they live, people. They're deceivers.
Technology that helps people connect, right? It's like, and like, I mean, you could probably tell, we spent the first hour talking about the metaverse and the future of basically building this whole technology roadmap to basically give people this realistic sense of presence. It's like, that's what I'm here to do, right? So this whole thing that's like arbitrating what is okay and what is not, I obviously have to.
Yes, the face of this guy will lead you into the metaverse, but he's not the one who's designing it and creating this satanic verse for you to live in.
Be involved in that, because this is at some level, I run the company, and I can't just.
See that? I run the company. Always have to remind the dumb masses that he runs the company. Does not run the company. He's just the face for it.
Abdicate that, but I also don't think that as a matter of governance, you want all of that decision-making vested in one individual. So I think one of the things that our country and our government gets right is the separation of powers. So, one of the things that I tried to create is we created this oversight board. It's an independent board where that basically we appointed people whose kind of paramount value is free expression, but they also balance that with things like, when is there going to be real harm to others in terms of safety or privacy or other human rights issues. And basically that board, people in our community can appeal cases to when they think that we got it wrong, and that board actually gets to make the final binding decision, not us. So in a way, I actually think that that is a more legitimate form of governance than having just a team internally that makes these decisions. Or
he basically just told you, before a person overlooks it, there's an AI dealing with it, okay?
Maybe some of them go up to me, although I don't spend a ton of my time on this on a day-to-day basis. But like, I think it's generally good to have some kind of separation of powers where you're architecting the governance, so that way you have different stakeholders and different people who can make these decisions, and it's not just like one private company that's making decisions even about what just happens on our platform.
How do you guys handle things?
He mentioned one private company, okay? This is not one company, and it is not a private company. It's an umbrella of companies, and they all have the same agenda, and they have the same guidelines, and they go about it in the same fashion, okay, people? So wake the fuck up, and don't take a word from these two deceivers, because they will have you living in a world of hurt and confusion.
When they're a big news item that's controversial. Like there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York
we have
Post.
that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
More politics for the masses. Keep it going. Repetition for the dumb masses.
So we took a different path than Twitter. I mean, basically, the background here.
We took a different path than Twitter. Keep convincing the masses that Facebook and Twitter is different. No, people. This is the face for Facebook, and they'll have a face for Twitter as well. But in reality, the people that's playing those strings are the same puppet masters. They own all these sites, and they're spying on you. So wake up.
Is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey.
And now, they're not hiding it, in plain sight, openly telling you that this Facebook company is in cahoots with the FBI.
Just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that.
Trying to convince you that the way that Twitter goes about it is different. Okay.
What we do is we have. If something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding.
Misinformation? Remember who they call misinformation. Truthers like I. People that bring the real truth to the table, they call us misinformation. Always remember that, people. In reality, these two are the misinformation.
It's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
Yeah, you are. So he's talking about basically stuff to get shadow banned, truth content that come out, stuff that doesn't go with their guidelines. You understand? But he's saying it hasn't been removed. So if it's been shadow banned, not many people are seeing it. You can still share it about. You understand? But they have put an effect on that post already. You see what I'm saying, people? It may seem like it's out there for people to see, but it is shadow banned.
Say the distribution is decreased.
It got shared.
How does that work?
Basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely.
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. But basically
They're telling you that if you post something against the guidelines, it will be kept quiet in the dark.
A lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. Obviously this is a hyper-political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still...
Political spectrum. Remember, you have fact and fiction. True and false. There is no political scale. There is right and wrong.
View as a legitimate institution in this country. It's like very professional law enforcement. They come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard.
Trying to tell the masses that the FBI is a professional company, okay? Do you think spying on the masses, on millions, on a very, very large scale, spying on the masses, do you think that is professional? Taking people's personal information, do you think that is professional? No.
About something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember.
Whatever they want to call it, FBI, CIA, government, yeah? They are the people watching you. The intelligence agency.
If it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
When something like that turns out to be
because all your information, all those statistics that they can get off that site is information for them, intelligence for them, which they can use against you. So stop putting your information out there.
Real. Is there regret for not having it evenly distributed and for throttling the distribution of that story?
What do you mean evenly distributed?
I mean evenly in that it's not suppressed. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because it turned out, after the fact. I mean, the fact checkers looked into it. No one was able to say it was false. Right?
Fact checker. Remember, whatever they use for a fact checker is going to be going by what is out there on the internet, what the gatekeepers want to be seen and what not to be seen, what Google gives you the answers for. You understand? It's not going to be no different from what Google tells you.
So basically, it had this period where it was getting list distribution. So yeah, I mean, but I think like, I think it sucks though. I think in the same way that probably having to go through like a criminal trial but being proven innocent in the end sucks. Like, it still sucks to have like that you had to go through a criminal trial, but at the end you're free.
Nothing but dumb shit to talk about, people.
So I don't know if the answer would have been don't do anything or don't have any process. I think the process was pretty reasonable. You know, we still let people share it, but obviously you don't want situations like that.
But certainly much more reasonable than Twitter's stance, and it's probably also the case of armchair quarterbacking, right? Or at least Monday morning quarterbacking, I should say, because in the moment you had reason to believe, based on the FBI talking to you, that it wasn't real and that there was going to be some propaganda. So what do you do?
Yeah.
And then if you just let it get out there, and what if it changes the election and it turns out to be bullshit? That's a real problem. And
do not come up on this channel looking for truth. You are being deceived. If you think you're coming here getting your information, nah, you're in the wrong place, people.
I would imagine that those kind of decisions are the most difficult. The decisions of like what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Yeah. I mean, what would you do in that situation?
I don't know what I would do. I would have to like really thoroughly.
You need to take a step back a minute and think to yourself, is there going to be an independent person who is not involved with the cult, not involved with the society, not involved with the agenda, having people like Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of the satanic characters that he's had on this show? You need to take a breath for a minute and think to yourself, is this guy on my side or is he on the same side as all these satanic puppets? Wake up.
Oh, first of all, you're dealing with the New York Post, which is one of the oldest newspapers in the country. So I would say I would want to talk to someone.
Don't get your information from the papers. No way. Deceivers from long time.
From the New York Post. And I would say, how did you come up with this data? Like, where are you getting the information from? How do you know whether or not this is correct? And then you have to make a decision, because they might have got duped. It's hard because everybody wants to look at it after the fact. Now that we know that the laptop was real and it was a legitimate story and there is potential corruption involved with him, what we think, oh, that should not have been restricted. That should not have been banned from sharing on Twitter. Right. I think everybody agrees with that. Even Twitter agrees with that. But the thing is...
Look, people, what's on the table? Is that a UFO and some horns? Nothing but satanic worship.
Then they didn't think that. In the beginning, they thought it was fake. So what do? Like, if something comes along and...
This character always has idols and voodoo and what kind of bullshit on the table. He has it because he's down into that deception. He's one of those satanic followers. So it's time for you to wake up. Do not get your information from these sodomites.
The Republicans cook up some scheme to make it look like Joe Biden's a terrible person, and they only do it so that they can win the election, but it's really just propaganda. What are you supposed to do with that? You're supposed to not allow that to be distributed. So if they think that's the case, it makes sense to me that they would try to stop it. But I just don't think that they looked at it hard enough. When the New York Post is talking about it, you know, they're pretty smart about what they release and what they don't release.
They're pretty smart about what they release and what they don't release. Because Joe Rogan knows about the gatekeepers. He knows what information's real and he knows what information's being held back, okay?
If they're going over some data from a laptop and you could talk to a person, but again, like this is just one story, like one individual story. Like how many of these pop up every day, especially in regards to polarizing issues?
Listen to this now, people. Polarizing issues. And if you don't understand what he means by polarizing, he means opposing forces. You got one on this end of the scale and one on this end of the scale. And listen to the things he's about to come out with.
Like climate change or COVID or you know, foreign policy or Ukraine. Anytime there's like...
all those things he just said there, absolute bullshit hoaxes on the masses, okay? They're not controversial topics. They're lies and deception. So you stay well away from that, people.
A really controversial issue where some people think that it's imperative that you take a very specific stance and you can't have the other stance.
The stance you need to take is way over there, not even listening to these sodomites.
Like those moments on social media, those trouble a lot of people because they don't know why certain things get censored or certain things get promoted.
Interested in selling print.
I agree.
Talking about information being held back and some information being let forward. He knows that. He knows the gatekeepers.
And it's like to be in your spot. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is that.
Once again, to be in your spot. Always have to remind the masses that he's in control of Facebook. But remember, people, he isn't in control of anything. The only thing he's in control of is reading that script. Same with the Joe Rogan.
Because like to be in your spot must be insanely difficult.
To be in your spot must be insanely difficult, people. You understand what I'm talking about now?
No matter what decision you make, you're going to have a giant chunk of people that are upset at you. And there might be a right way to handle it, but I don't know.
He's not making any decisions, people. Let me remind you of that.
Fuck right way is.
Well, I think the right way is
the powers that be control this one and control the apps. I'll say it over and over again.
Establish principles for governance that try to be balanced and not have the decision making too centralized. Because I think that it's hard for people to accept that like some team at Meta or that I personally am making all these decisions.
Personally, keeps going on about it, people.
And I think people should be skeptical about so much concentration around that. So that's why a lot of the innovation that I've tried to push for in governance is around things like establishing this oversight board. So that way you have people who are luminaries around expression from all over the world, but also in the US. Folks like Michael McConnell, who's a Stanford professor, who's like he was I forget which Republican president.
Make it seem as if the professors and the university people are very smart. Okay, all they know is the book.
And appointed him, but he was, I think, going to be considered for the Supreme Court at some point. He's a very, very prominent and kind of celebrated.
They live in a world of hurt, and so will you be if you take your information from them.
Free expression advocate, and he helped me set the thing up. And I think like setting up forms of governance around that are independent of us, that basically get the final say on a bunch of these decisions. And that's a step in the right direction. In the Hunter Biden case that you talked about before, I don't want our company to decide what's misinformation and what's not. So when we work with third parties and basically let different organizations do that. No, then you.
I'm getting bored of this now, people. I hope you get the message.
The question of are those organizations biased or not, and that's a very difficult question. But at least we're not the ones who are basically sitting here deciding. We're not the Ministry of Truth for the world that's deciding whether everything is true or not. So I'd say. This is not a solved problem. Controversies aren't going away. I think that it is interesting that the U.S.
He says controversies aren't going away. So what we're going to see, people, is we're going to see fake controversy. We're going to see a fake side here and a fake side on the other side. But in reality, they are going to be closing that gap and squeezing the truth out, people. As time goes on, the truth is going to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The censorship is growing.
Is actually more polarized than most other countries. So I think sitting in the U.S., it's easy to extrapolate and say, hey, it probably feels this way around the whole world. And from the social science research that I've seen, that's not actually the case. There's a bunch of countries where social media is just as prominent, but polarization is either flat or has declined slightly. So there's something.
You need to remember, they have a different agenda when it comes to these different countries. So you will be seeing different things happening on those nations.
Kind of different happening in the U.S. But for better or worse, it does seem like the next several years do seem like they're set up to be quite polarized. So I tend to agree with you. There are going to be a bunch of different decisions like this that come up because of the scale of what we do. Almost every major world event has some angle that's like the Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp angle about how the services are used in it. So yeah, I think just establishing as.
Don't let him brainwash you about how these apps have a different angle. They have the same angle because it's the same people running them. Wake up.
Much as possible independent governance.
Right, that's it, people. Hope you get the message. Don't put any energy into this Joe Rogan. Don't put any energy into the satanic characters that he has on his show. Don't put any energy into these satanic apps. It's time for you to stay woke and be conscious. Don't let them control your information and play it back at you. Wake up, people. Bless up and catch me in the next one. Love and respect.